you. My name is Stan Turner, and that is the least important thing I'm going to say all night. I just thought I better identify myself in case you know where to address the complaints. So glad to be with you all. We have a wonderful evening all lined up for you. Wonderful speakers coming your way. How many of you are from out of town, by the way? Outside Minnesota? Wow, how about that? You've been on the gangster tour, have you? Some of you? And you thought we were clean up here, clean as the Griffins. We're proud of Ma Barker. We're proud of John Dillinger. We gave him a nice home here for a while, huh? Well, I'm glad you got the tour, but really more than about crime and the jazz age around here. We have some wonderful people here who served alongside you and in other formations during World War II. I'm a groupie. I'm proud to be associated with you. I'm of a different generation, but my generation and those younger than us owe you a debt that we can never repay, and it is an absolute honor to be among you tonight. So thank you. Well, I think it's fitting and proper that we should salute our country. Would you please, those of you who are able, please rise and recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. I'm going to call forth now Bob Clemens, who will give us the invocation.
Lord, we thank you that we're able to be here this evening. We thank you that those of us that have survived, that you've given us such good life. We thank you for the kids and the grandkids that are here. We thank you for those people who serve us, who made the food and who serve the food. Bless them, Lord. Bless the food as we use it, and bless us as we serve you. And now a moment of silence in memory of those who've gone before us and their families. We pray in the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Servers, what a crew here. Thank you all. Well, again, I bid you all welcome to this wonderful gathering. Bob Clemens, everybody who helped put it together. I know it takes a big crew to do this, but it's an absolute honor to be with you. Those of you from out of town, I must tell you that the timing is perfect, because I don't know if you've heard, but we have something called winter here, and it's coming on soon. And it lasts for 11 months, and then we have about a month of this stuff. So today, you know, some people were saying, gee, it's kind of chilly. You know, this is a heat wave for us up here. So anyway, we bid you welcome, and hope you've been having, I know you've been having some great tours, and a good chance to get together, fellowship, sistership, whatever you want to call that, and it's just a great, great gathering to see you all here. I think without further ado, I'd like to call up Art Mendelson. Art, the Secretary-Treasurer of this association. He has a few words of wisdom for us, then we will get on with the program. Art.
Hi there. Hi. Are we all having a good time? Yeah. 16 years after coming to Bloomington the first time, and this is just amazing. It's a great place, and I love it here. Okay, I'm going to keep my comments short here. I wanted to fill you in on what happened at the Board of Directors meeting today. There was a fist fight. Actually, it was a pivotal moment in the history of the group, because today we elected one of the kids as the first serving president of the 463rd Bomb Group. And this is, the president is Jeff Will. He served as vice president for the last 2 years. What we decided to do at the reunion, and I know some of you have already heard this, so I'll keep it short, to make the vice president position a successor position, and in 2 years, every 2 years, that person will become the president of the group. So we also elected a new vice president. By the way, I'm sorry, Jeff is not here tonight. He couldn't be because his mother is seriously ill, but it looks like she's going to be okay. But our new vice president is here, and he is also a member of the kids group, and it is Ted Doyle, son of Weaver.
Here, here!
Please stand up quickly. Ted, this means you're going to have to be on time to meetings now. Okay, one other change that we made is that as the group transitions, we made an alternate board of director member for each of the squadrons to be one of the kids. And so, and I'm going to butcher this, I know. Hold on 1 second, I can tell you. For the 772nd, the alternate board of director member is Janet Moore. Janet, would you please stand up? Janet, I see you. There she is. For the 773rd, it's Mary Erickson. Mary, where are you? There you go, Mary. For the 774th, it's Joanne Bevins. Joanne, where are you? And for the 775th, the one and only Larry Geller. One last thing, we were asked by the 483rd to do a joint reunion again. A lot of you will remember that we tried to do this a few years ago and it didn't really work out. We're looking at it for 2015. Next year, it looks very likely that we will be going back to San Antonio. And so we'll let you know as soon as we decide where we're going to stay and what dates it is, we'll let you know. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Art. Well, folks, we have some very special people and some very special little events for you up here tonight. As I say, I'm glad you've been having a good reading. I think it started Thursday, is that right, Bob? Things got rolling here. Wednesday, okay, got into town. And you've had a chance to look around a bit. Our keynote speaker tonight will not be able to be with us, I'm so sorry to say. She's a dear friend of mine. I get permission from my dear Mary from time to time to flirt with Liz Strophus openly. She is such a treasure. I had a little few remarks prepared to bring her up to the podium tonight. She's having some health problems tonight, but she is in the care of doctors, so if you could send some special thoughts her way, that would be nice. Also, a friend of ours who I think was going to be here tonight, Larry Bachman, our good buddy, who is a B-24 driver. You ever heard of a B-24, you veterans? Boo! Yeah. Larry, of course, is a member of the great Floral family, Bachman Flores, very big up here, and just a prince of a guy. And again, if you could send some kind thoughts his way, he's in the hospital tonight. He's in the ICU, and but he's been that route before. He's a tough guy. He's a very tough guy. If you looked at his war experiences, you'd know that for sure. But he's a delightful guy, and we wish him all the best and hope to see him at these events soon. So, to begin here, I was looking over the record of the 463rd Bomb Group. Boy, how many members of the 463rd are here who air crew or ground crew? Can we see the hands up here? Yeah, okay. I looked through the combat record, but you guys had an easy war, didn't you, huh? Ploiesti oil fields in Romania, oil fields in Vienna, Daimler-Benz plant in Berlin, and on and on and on, some 300 flak holes in some of your ships. Clemens took about 20 cannon shells in his. I'm sure that was typical. The fact that you're here tonight is a miracle. We are, as I said earlier, always in your debt to you and your fellow airmen who flew in all combat zones, who flew in all kinds kinds of combat situations. There are no words to thank you. Yes, thank you. And the 463rd collected not one but two distinguished unit citations as well, one for the Ploiesti raid and one for that strike against the Daimler-Benz aircraft works in Berlin. No small feat, and so a distinguished group of men, and I know you, any ground crewmen here, couldn't have won the war, couldn't have fought the war, and I know you flyers are the first to agree. I don't know if we have any, what we used to call ground pounders, but without those guys, there's no way we could have gotten the war. Just the same to say about the women who womaned or manned the factories, the war factories back here during the war. And that leads me to Liz Strophus, who cannot be with us tonight. Liz helped win the war as much as any guy in combat. She flew with the Women's Air Force Service Pilots, WASPs. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about those ladies. 25,000 women like Liz Strophus applied to serve stateside here, performing duties the men normally would, ferrying aircraft around, towing targets for the bomb, you know, the gunners like Vince over here to practice to get up to speed so they could get into combat. These ladies did all of these things. Liz herself was checked out on P-39 Air Cobra fighters, B-26 Marauders called the Widowmaker, and she was also qualified to fly a little ship called the B-17, something I think you fellows would know a little bit about. She is fantastic. She's now in her 90s. She lives in a town about 60 miles south of here called Faribault. She and her sister, and Liz did amazing things during the war. As I say, 25,000 were called, only 1,800 plus were accepted. So they really were an elite group. And you know what they got for their service after the end of the war? Nothing. They got zero. They got no compensation. They got nothing from the government. Barely a thank you, but certainly no recognition. It took years and years and years, but finally some good people came along, and all of the surviving WASPs got the Congressional Gold Medal just about 5 years ago, called out to Washington, and like the Tuskegee Airmen, finally got the recognition they were deserved. I'm so sorry Liz can't be with us tonight, but that's just a capsule of what she's all about. She's a magnificent lady. She has an unbelievable spirit. She's an inspiration to all of us. You don't have to know her for long to catch that contagion. She's just absolutely wonderful. So maybe one of these fine days she'll be able to join us again in some capacity here, and I know you will like it very much. Okay, I've had a show of hands for World War II vets and widows. How about some of you guys who served in the war in the German POW camps or the Italian camps? How many here? POWs? We salute you. Thank you for your service. Sir, were you a guest of the Germans, I assume? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, which camp were you in? Which Stalag?
Stalag Luft 4.
Where was that?
Keep hiding.
Okay, all right. And sir, were you too?
Luft 1.
Luft 1, and was that up by Barth in Pomerania?
Yeah.
Okay, right up on the Baltic Sea then, right. So
One over here. One over here.
one over here too. And what Stalag were you in?
You. Can't remember.
That's okay. I've heard of that one. There were so many who could remember. Yeah. Interesting, part of my uncle's bomber crew, he flew with the Royal Canadian Air Force Halifax bombers, looked something like B-24s. The three survivors of his crew, they were shot down over Berlin and wound up in Barth, Stalag Luft 1 too. So know a little bit about those places. They were hardly hospitality suites, were they? That was tough duty, I know that. So thank you for your service and for your sufferings too there. Let's see what else here. In lieu of Liz Strophus being our keynote speaker tonight, we're going to do a little improvisation here tonight. Mr. Clemens and Mr. Parker, I think what I'd like to do now, with everybody's permission, Bob, is call Bob and Vince up here, and I will play a role that I've been playing in my adult career, and that is kind of a friendly interrogator. I'm in the news business, so I do throw questions around a little bit. Bob and Vince Parker with the 301st of the 15th Air Force, and of course Bob with the 463rd. This is going to be an interesting bit of gyrating here, but we'll get it done. Vince Parker. tail gunner in B-17s, of course, with the 15th Air Force. Did 40-plus missions. And Bob Clemens, who actually flew on 60, but 10 were disallowed, they were callbacks. But he only did 50. So Bob, shame on you. That's just not much of an effort, but thank you. You guys are, and good. We've got a wireless mic here, and we'll hand it back and forth. We have some great war stories to tell you, and these folks are true because they were here. Bob Clemens, contrary to orders, I know you were a by-the-book guy, but you kept a diary, didn't you, during your combat flying?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And tell us, I know some of the entries cover the entire flying combat time?
Well, not only a diary, but I kept my logs. When I got off the ship at Newport News, Virginia, coming back, the young sailor said, you got to throw that thing in the drink, that duffel bag you got full of logs and maps. And I said, I don't think so. And he said, yeah, you got to do that. I said, let me talk to your commanding officer. Oh, I said, go ahead. So I still have my maps and my logs.
Bob, a navigator, of course, sitting up there in the nose of the B-17, and you, my friend, Vince, you were the opposite end of the ship, weren't you?
Right.
And you saw the war from what perspective?
I went through the war backwards.
Okay, all right.
And you know that's never changed.
You know, the first day of the Depression was the day, for Mrs. Clemens, the day he was born.
Well, the long knives are out already. Those gunners and navigators never did get along very
We love
well.
each other.
They do. They are the best of friends. Bob Clemens, every time I get you on the radio, I always, I guess the word is make you, ask you but kind of force you to tell a story that's one of my favorites, and I know you're tired of it, and I don't blame you, but it's a great story, especially for those of you out of town. You flyers will certainly remember Axis Sally, Berlin Betty, sometimes known as Axis Sally. Remember her, guys? Yeah? Yeah, well, she was always taunting you, especially when you were airborne. She seemed to know in many cases where you were going, what the target was. And to get you to tune in, your radio operators to pipe it through the intercom, they play, I think, Glenn Miller music, things like that, out of Berlin, to get your attention. And then they lay the propaganda. Well, Bob Clemens here. Bob, I wish you would tell us again about this particular mission where I think you were actually singled out by Axis Sally when she was on the air from Berlin. Well, you were in the air flying toward a target. And go ahead.
Well, it was September 5th, 1944, 1 week before I finished my missions on September 12th. I went down to the flight line. We were scheduled to fly in Able 2, and before we got in the airplane, along came Colonel Frank Kurtz. He said, I'm going to fly in the right seat. And nobody said anything much about that.
The Colonel.
So we got airborne, and we moved up to Able 1, so we led the group, and we got airborne, and of course we turned on Axis Sally because she played that great music. You know, Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, Gene Krupa, all of those great bands. But after we listened to a couple tunes, she said, Frankie, we know where you're going today. Now, she knew Frank because Frank had been an Olympic diver in 1936 Olympics.
In Berlin.
In Berlin. You remember Berlin, Jesse Owens was the fastest man in the world, happened to be a black man. And, you know, Hitler didn't like black people. There were a lot of people he didn't like, and he didn't want to give the 4 medals that Jesse Owens won, but world opinion forced him to do that, but he was not present at the presentation. Anyway, she said, Frankie, we know where you're going today. You're coming to Budapest, and we're waiting for you. And by the way, we're waiting for that little pink-faced navigator from Minnesota, too. Now, it sounds plenty funny now. I don't think it was very funny. Just one of those things that happens in war that my dad had a great expression. He said, you know, son, you left home as a kid and you came back a man. And that's what happened to us.
How old were you, Bob, when you left for war?
I was 20. I had finished those 50 missions before it was legal for me to buy an alcoholic drink.
Amazing, amazing. And let's see, Frankie Kurtz, by the way, we should say, he got to know Access Sally, didn't he, in Berlin in 1936? She was an American who defected to Germany, right? And I think they had a little tryst in 1936, didn't they? And it didn't end well, so she was a bit bitter toward Frank. This begs the question, Bob and Vince, how did the Krauts know where you were going and who was on board your B-17? How could they know this stuff?
Well, you had something, they had the newspaper from White Bear, didn't they? Tell us about that.
Well, you know, the Germans used clipping services. Now, they didn't contract for them directly. It went through 4 or 5 or 6 hands before it got to them. But many of us in small towns, I come from a town just north of here, about 15 miles, White Bear Lake. And there was an article about me in the newspaper before I went overseas. Didn't tell where I was going because I didn't know where I was going, but it told a lot about me. And that's what they used if you were a prisoner of war, I guess, didn't they? Yeah. They knew a lot about us. And of course, almost all German officers had gone to college in the United States. Most of them have gone to Yale, Harvard, Colgate, Columbia.
Ivy League Nazis, how do you like that?
And they spoke perfect English, so they were pretty good at interrogating people, I understand. So that's, and in Italy, we didn't have any fences around the field, and of course the Italians listened in on a lot of the stuff we did. In my particular squadron, the 4 officers went to briefing, and then we came back to get ready in the aircraft, and then the navigator briefed the 6 enlisted men. And maybe that's where they listened to us, I don't know, but they sure passed on a lot of information to the Germans.
And a lot of it was accurate, wasn't it, Bob?
Very accurate.
Well, Bob didn't know where he was going. He was a navigator.
And wasn't it appropriate that this guy rode backwards in the wind?
I don't want him to get even so easily. Let me tell you about one of those missions. One day a shell exploded under the ball turret. That's that little hill underneath the B-17. We dropped back, we had some problems, and the ball turret guy called up and says, has anybody got a windshield wiper back up there? It was hydraulic fluid from the brakes that had been shot out. The pilot called me and he said, Parker, have you got your parachute back there? I said, come on, Clancy. He said, we may have to throw out your parachute. I said, I'm going with it. He says, your choice. He said, we got no brakes, we probably don't have tires. We're going to put a parachute in the tail, and as we come in, you can throw it out as a brake. You've seen that in movies. Parachute behind the seat. So all the way in on the landing pattern, he's talking to me. He doesn't trust me. If I throw it out too soon, I'll mess him up in the pattern. So we finally landed, we hit the ground, throw the chute down, Parker. We went the full length of the runway, we ground looped, the ship was a mess. He came back and he grabbed me and said, Parker, you did a good job. I said, Clancy, I didn't do anything. That's what I mean.
You know, they do call them do nothing.
My turn.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Vince, you had you got shot up like most of you guys did. In one case, your pilot had to put her down in a field. Was it Yugoslavia?
Mm-hmm.
Now, normally that would be a wheels up belly landing. Get the gunner out of the ball turret, get everybody up in crash positions. In this case, wheels down. Is that right? In a field. Can you tell us about it?
Well, one day we took off for a target called Hagen's home in Hungary. We never got there. We just got to 10,000 feet where you have to go on oxygen. It's 50 below zero up there and you can't breathe without some help from you. And the ship began to shake. And I'm way back there in the tail, and I'm the only guy with his own escape hatch in the tail of a B-17. I could wiggle past my ammunition boxes, go to the escape hatch, turn the handle, and I'd be out of there. And I spent a few hours there. Well, anyway, the ship finally stopped shaking. What happened was the propeller tore off the ship, it sliced through the waist, it took a chunk of the tail off, the horizontal stabilizer. And the pilot called the navigator and said, we ain't going to get home. He said, find me a place to land. We landed in a pasture in Yugoslavia. We got the DFC for that landing. And I'm back there doing my thing. So what happened? We called for help, and a C-47 came in. That's a twin engine. We call it the Jeep of the sky. And you probably know what that aircraft is. So it came in below the radar. The partisans were there, and it landed. It taxied over to about 10 of us. The door flew open. There was a beautiful nurse there, and we rushed. She's mine. We She made some comment like, "Get in here, you so-and-so." We're in enemy territory. We took off. We landed. Came back to our base. One of our gunners wasn't with us, and he was crying, but he knew where my whiskey was. He was unfortunately I got back home.
All right, good. You can hang on to that. Bob, you had, of course, all of you had harrowing. There were funny experiences, but of course the other side of it was these harrowing experiences, dicing with death. You knew every mission could be your last. Your aircraft, on more than one occasion, I think one mission, 300 flak holes in your plane, Bob?
Went to Budapest the end of June 1944, and about 300 flak holes and about 30 holes from 20 millimeter cannon from the German fighters. But you know, my experiences are no different and no more exciting or scary than any of the rest of you. I pay tribute to each one of you. I have enjoyed getting to know each one of you, and this has been it's almost like knowing family, to know guys that did the same thing that each one of us did, and we have a common bond, and we're growing old. I understand that there are about 1 million of us left out of the 16 million in the military, World War II, dying at 600 to 700 a day. So we're disappearing rather rapidly.
And that happened during the war too. Looking at your combat record, the 463rd lost 106 aircraft in combat. That's at least 10 guys per ship. So that probably, sorry to say, was typical of the time. As a gunner, you were up against the Luftwaffe, and tell us about what it was like trying to knock those guys down.
Well, the enemy fighters would come out of the sun in pursuit curve. They'd come down about 350 miles an hour, and when they leveled off at the tail, we were traveling forward at 150 miles an hour. That was our cruising speed. So they lost 200 miles, they were down to 200 miles an hour. Well, you could shoot at 600 yards, they'd have to get within 300 yards. So they changed their tactics. Another thing, I think they knew I was the best tail gunner in the war.
Of course they did.
Maybe all the SWAT.
Doesn't think much of himself.
So they changed their tactics, and they would come in and shoot at the pilot's compartment. They would come in upside down, they'd take one shot at the pilot, drop off, maybe the lower ball turret could get a shot, and then they disappeared. They went down. So most attacks on B-17s near the end of the war were toward the pilot's compartment.
Head-on attacks, in other words,
yes.
Right? Head-on, all right. The Me-262, gentlemen, this was one of Hitler's wonder weapons. It was a jet fighter plane, which luckily he turned into a tactical bomber toward the end of the war. It wouldn't have won the war, but it would have prolonged the war, no doubt about it. Did either of you guys ever see an Me-262, a two-jet engine fighter?
Yeah, on September 12th, 1944, I saw one, not very close, but we saw one. It seemed to be traveling at an abnormal amount of speed, and it was, compared to our propeller-driven fighter planes that were escorting us, but he didn't come very near us.
Vince, how about you? Ever see one?
Yeah, I never saw one. They would come out of the sky, get below a B-17, come up, take a shot, and they could. Our escorts couldn't catch it.
Right,
But I never saw one.
Our P-51 pilots, a couple of them told me the only way to knock down one of their jets was to get them in the landing pattern when they were cutting speed to land. And one guy, I know, shot down two of them in the landing pattern coming in. But that's about the only way they could do it.
I never know good in a dogfight.
Yeah, right, absolutely. You know, this is something we all wonder about. You guys survived. What do you think about that? Do you often think about your buddies, your friends who did not, and why you were spared, Vince?
You know, when we came back from the war, we put it behind us. We got a job, We found a gal, we found a preacher, we got married, we had babies. We did it in that order, as strange as it seems.
You had the sequence right there.
And then we grew up in a free country, a little bit of our own making, each of us. And now we're old and ugly.
No.
And people are beginning to ask us about the war. And so it's unfortunately, because 400 of us are dying every day. And I hate that statistic.
I do too.
So now Bob and I go out and talk to high school kids. And we really have fun. And there's a good bunch of kids out there. We're in good hands, aren't we,
Good.
Bob?
You bet.
What do they ask? What are some common questions, Bob, from the kids?
What was it like? Why did you do it? Did you enlist or were you drafted? Just questions like that. Did you know what you were getting into? Did it make you grow up in a hurry? There's a lot of difference between an 18, 19, 20-year-old today than there was then. But you can't blame kids. These are different times. The aircraft were much simpler. It didn't take very long. I went into the service in November of 42. By February of 44, I was a second lieutenant and had the wings of an aerial navigator at age 19. You can't do that today with the complicated aircraft there are. So we're in good hands. And if you really think you're in good hands, when you talk to an Air Force ROTC group at the University of Minnesota or St. Thomas University, then you really see the cream of the crop. Boy, they are terrific people.
So are you guys. Bob, I want to ask you the question I asked Vince. You were spared. Do you often think about that and wonder why?
The only thing I can think of is God had a purpose for my life, and He wanted me to do something. And one of the things that I have done that meant a lot to me, for over 33 years I've led Bible studies in prison. And that's, with some people, isn't very popular. But let me tell you, you meet some great people, and they made a mistake. Most of them with probably in 90 seconds of their life. If you took that 90 seconds out of their life, they wouldn't be there. But they made a bad mistake, and they're going to suffer the rest of their life for it. So we like to minister to them and bring them some comfort from the outside. And we are well received by the administration, the guards, and the inmates. The only thing that the guards say to me is, they're glad I'm not an inmate because they couldn't handle a tough guy like me.
I think Parker could handle you, Bob, maybe, huh?
Bob Clemens is a very special guy.
Yeah, he is.
He's navigated through life with a big compass. He digs in. He gets involved. He makes decisions that are proper. Someone once said that there is nothing new under the sun. Well, they didn't know Bob Clemens.
We could say the same thing about you, Mr. Parker. We could indeed, you're right. We got a wonderful opportunity here. I know you have questions from your veterans too. Please fire away here if you could, pun intended here. But let's take the opportunities. Two marvelous guys, as you all are. We're not just picking, I brought them up here because I know them. They're friends of mine. And we have a good, easy relationship. But any of you could be up here. But do you have any questions or comments? I really would like you to do that tonight. This is a special moment for us all, and I know you guys, especially you combat vets, are not shy, are you? I don't think so, are you? Huh? Please, somebody? Cowards, come on.
Stan, we've heard it all before.
Ladies, you must have some questions, don't you? Please.
One of the great pleasures I had, Mary Erickson's dad went down on that mission to Budapest at the end of June 1944. And she asked me a couple of years ago to give her a description of what happened on that mission. And I was privileged to have my log and my book that I kept notes in, and I was able to fulfill her request, and it was a lot of fun to be able to tell her what her dad did on that particular mission. Went down then, and then he was a guest of the Germans until the end of the war in May of 1945.
Have either of you gentlemen been up at a B-17 anytime recently?
I vowed that I would never get into B-17 again.
Did you?
I landed in Banquet, Maine, got down, kissed the ground, and I looked back and I said, I'm never getting in one of you again.
And?
So I'm out at plane a few years ago, and it was a B-17, they were giving rides for $425. And my grandkids were with me, and they knew it, and there was a big string, and the bomber was out, Grandpa, go out there, get in there, fly in it. So finally, someone came over and said, say, they heard that you were a tail gunner in a B-17, and you get to get a free ride. Okay, so I got up and I walked, I opened the door, and Bob Clemens was sitting in the door. Worse than a mission.
No.
But let me tell you the end of the story in a minute. I found out from somebody that someone paid the $425 to pay for my flight up there. Larry Bottom.
Oh.
Isn't that
Yep,
great?
yep.
And he denied it, you know. I told
A
him.
B-24 pilot, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I told him I wanted to ride in a B-24, but I don't think I want to.
What a sweetheart of a guy. Bob?
I've been fortunate, I've been up about 20 times since World War II in B-17, some of them with the press, it was free, some of them I paid. I've taken up a few of my friends, paid for their rides. 3 of the preachers from our church I've taken up to let them see what it was like to fly in one of these bombers because they're pretty young. And that was a great thing. I had my former school teacher who I met in 1935 when he was 22 years old and I was, I would have been 11. And he and I were friends until he died about 4 years ago. I took him up because he always wanted to see what one of his students did during World War II. So I've had a great life. I'm amazed at the great life I've had, how well people have treated me. So many people have been so nice to me, and I came from a very poor background, and I'm so thankful to this country to be well off economically. I think it's just amazing what you can do in this great country of ours, and for that reason, like many other vets, I fly good old Glory every day out in front of our home. And I'm the outgoing president, and I'd like you to meet the First Lady, Mary Nell Clemens. And the first daughter, Carla Burton. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause. This really buoys the spirit. Mary and I often talk about current events in this country, and we sometimes wonder what you veterans think about what you see. Did I really put my life on the line for this sometimes mayhem that goes on in this country? We must be a very strong country because somehow we weather these things, and we have people like this to inspire us, and that keeps us going and calls us to a higher plane. Thank God for you all, and I mean that sincerely. One thing about Liz Strophus, who was the WASP pilot who was supposed to be with us tonight and couldn't, I just wanted to tell you, she's never lost her zest for flying, her zest for life. At Bob, I think she was about age 71 or 72, and she went up to Duluth, Minnesota, where there's an Air Guard wing, and of course, with permission, got a G-suit on, climbed into the back seat of an F-16 Fighting Falcon, state-of-the-art, high-tech fighter plane. And she went up and had an absolute ball. The pilot said, "You want to take it?" She said, "Yep." She tried to whip a barrel roll and the whole thing. I wish she could have told you herself, but that's the kind of lady she is, and you know, a great, great American she is indeed. So, anything else? Let's see, Bob, we have one bit of business here we want to do? Okay, I think something about kids for raffles too, do we have that? Or Bob, why don't you come up and finish it up here?
We're not giving any of the kids away in a raffle.
We're going to raffle some kids, we're going to get some kids away. I gathered about 12 of them out in the parking ramp, so.
I want to tell you about Karen Schneider. She's the gal that got this started. Her daddy in 1997 was the chairman of the reunion we had here in 1997. And here in 2013, Karen came along and said, let's do this here. And she got this started. You know, when she and Carla and Gary first came here, they had to put their hard hats on in February. This place wasn't finished until March. Karen, I have a presentation to make to you. Will you come up? Karen?
Ladies and gentlemen, Karen. There's a Kodak moment. I hope somebody's getting this.
It's my second dad.
Could you do it again?
Do it again, Bob. There we go. Hold that pose. Great. I got lots of flashbulbs. That's it. Thank you. Karen, congratulations and thank you, Bob.
And then one for Stan Turner.
Oh, no. No, I can't.
And then I wanted to introduce a couple of people. Probably the most outstanding historian of any bond group from World War II. Amen. Joel Swindelhorst. And then a man locally that's very important. The 8th Air Force Historical Society has about 400 members in Minnesota, even this long, almost 70 years after the end of World War II. And we meet every Wednesday for lunch. And we have a program every Wednesday. And these poor people are really put to it because I'm the MC. But I want to introduce the president of the 8th Air Force Historical Society, Steve Marks.
I just about finished it. I want to end with an anecdote, if I could. We mentioned the 8th Air Force Association a few years back, and God rest his soul, he's gone now. A guy named Ed Kippers was the president of the 8th Air Force Association. I don't know if you remember him, Steve. But nice guy. He was, the younger generation, but he was an absolute wannabe 8th Air Force guy. And Bob mentioned that there were press flights on B-17s and B-24s where we would get our camera crews on board, and some folks who always wanted to fulfill their fondest wish of flying in a B-24 or 17 got a chance to do it. Well, it happened that one day a B-24 was going to fly from Sioux Falls, South Dakota to St. Paul Downtown Airport. We in the news business got the word, and so we had our cameras set up knowing Ed Kippers, this wannabe B-17 or 24 pilot, was on board. Ed was kind of a introverted kind of guy, didn't have too much to say, but you could see the excitement in his face every time you mentioned B-17 or 8th Air Force. So he was on board, chance of a lifetime. So he did the flight, came into St. Paul Downtown Airport, our cameras are rolling, we run out with the microphones. Ed, what was it like? What was it like flying? You've dreamed since you were a kid of flying in a B-24 Liberator, 4-engine heavy, one of the storied bombers of World War II. What was it like? How was the flight? And in his droll way he said, it was pretty good, pretty easy, but the flak got a little heavy over North Minneapolis. He was a kid again, and just one example of the excitement and joy that comes from getting really a hands-on experience. And, of course, peacetime, that's a piece of cake, and but you have your imagination working. What was it like you experienced, you veterans? That was hell on earth up there, and we know that. And again, we salute you and thank you, you and your offspring, your wives, the widows who might be here, thank you all. God bless you. Thank you so much, and hope you're having a great reunion. Do visit our cities again. We love you, but don't come during the winter. Thank you very much. Not that we don't want to see you.
Thank you very much for being with us this evening. We really enjoyed it.
My pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Now the kids.
Kids?
I'm going to auction off a raffle of kids.
I'm watching those, they have two seasons. Winter and winter.
Okay. Yes, I'm gonna take it over there. Okay.
I think we have to do this professionally.
I don't know who's pulling. All right. I am the voice of the kids only, that's all I am. All of these gifts have been donated by the kids, either the actual items or the monies to purchase them. And so without further ado, here we go. First gift. The book, it's commemorate our gangster days. Secret partners, Big Tom Brown and the Barker Gang. And the winner is...
Art Mendelson.
Seriously? No. I don't take that seriously.
Ruth, and I apologize, Benedict.
Ruth?
She loses.
It's Harlem's daughter.
Another book, Don't Call Us Malls, The Women of John Dillinger Gang. Art? No.
Lucy Nesbitt.
Lucy. All right, you know we had that fun gangster lady, I can't remember her name, she's in the film, who?
Edna.
Edna. Right, and she told us about the film, and here it is. Gangsterland, The Kissing Bandit. Here we go, and the winner is?
Bob Clemens.
We have a B-17 tote bag.
Life isn't fair.
CD, top hits of the 40s to keep you young and dancing, goes to...
Linda McClellan. Linda. Where's she at?
So, as a tribute to this great state of Minnesota, we have Minnesota hand-picked wild rice. And so you'll know what to do with it, a little cookbook that goes with it, and all.
Let's see if we can get somebody on this side of the
This is a good side.
Bill Roberts. This side, there he is.
So when I was getting these gifts, I mean, of course he was from New York, but he was in the Historical Society gift shop, said, there's nothing more Minnesota than, you have to say this for me.
Oli and Lena. Oh, yeah.
So, Oli and Lena,
Very good.
and a pen from Minnesota that says, you betcha.
Denise Barney, where are you?
Y'all are not on the lights. You waiting for the big stuff, huh? Okay. Minnesota Greatest Generation t-shirt, and to remind all of you veterans of the culinary delights that you experienced in the 463rd Spam car. Art?
John Bevins. I'm not doing this on purpose, I'm really not. I'll try my left hand.
Okay, good one. United States Air Force tumbler, but it's the good kind, that's Tavis tumblers. And a United States Air Force key ring goes to
James Patton. There we go. There he is.
Judge in Kansas.
Oh, yeah. The left hand got to the left side here. That's good.
I think this is the year for tote bags. We have another tote bag, along with Glenn Miller's greatest hits.
Wow.
Art?
Can I use that?
Matt Nesbitt.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Our technician.
All right, we have a little interesting assortment. That's it. Greatest Generation ruler. It's straight, bottom on top of the head, whatever. Since most of you spent all of 1944 away from the stage, you know, you kind of missed that year. So here's the news, sports, and things that went on in 1944 while you're home. So we have that. And something for you to do on the plane, World War II color posters.
I can't wait to see you win. Barbara Moore. That'll keep you busy.
Wonderful book from the Library of Congress, the Veteran History Program Project, Voices of War.
Bill Snyder.
Look, now some of y'all are getting these little stickers. They have that clear back, and it's a B-17, the Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress is all it says. It'd be kind of cool, so. Tote bag, gee. B-17 luggage tag. And a great coffee mug. Freedom is not free. But it's worth fighting for. But it's worth fighting for. Art?
Nora Patton Taylor.
With my luck, it'd land on Andy's head. All right, we have another B-17 travel mug. And you know, all this week I've been hearing things like, I remember things that happened 60 years ago, but I don't remember what happened yesterday. We're going to see if it's true because it's World War II knowledge cards. See if you remember what happened 60 years ago. And?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh.
Larry Geller.
We were wondering where those earrings were. Why are you not wearing them?
I might be.
No comment on that one. And for all of you who really wanted those ma'am cards, we have another set and another t-shirt.
Is this the grand prize?
This is it.
Our grand prize winner is
Grand prizes. They're all so grand.
Mary Brockhoff. What is it with the Patton family?
Two to the Pattons. Oh, yeah. And you make the next.
We have one last.
Yeah, one last little announcement. As per Suzanne, we have a special gift for Ted. A cookie. This is a standing joke. A cookie for being a good boy this year.
That's it. Oh, wait a minute, I have a report. He was not entirely, we had to go and look for him yesterday.
I wasn't on that one, so
Well,
most of the time it was
you
good.
did not let us down. You didn't disappoint us. That was fun.
Give us half the cookie back. That's it. Thank you very much. Yeah, we need to do, what's going to happen here is they're going to move this table out of the way so there can be dancing, and then we're going to get the vets down by the by the banner so we can take your picture. So should we do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we gonna do the kids group?
Down towards the banner, we'll take your picture.
You did a great job, but you impromptu up there. You are.